intolerance dressed up as rational discourse.
Okay, Gabe.
Well, making a claim doesn't solve it. I mean, you can poke fun at me.
What do you want to ask?
You're just dressing it up. Well, answer the question. I mean, if it's so ridiculous,
please rephrase the question. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Go ahead, answer it.
Please rephrase the question. I'm not sure what you're asking me.
I can barely hear him.
Okay, what he's asking is if you can put the question in a nutshell form so that he can answer the question.
I want to know I want him to give me a sufficient worldview in which he can justify.
Okay, he's going to have to stop prescribing me in the process of asking his question. I can't answer his question if it's loaded.
Okay, but you have a worldview. Everybody has a worldview whereby they judge all other beliefs.
How do you prove a claim like that?
Well, it's just the same way you do. It's self-evident.
It's self-evident?
Well,
you think that's how I'm proving the claims that I'm making?
When Dustin asked you earlier, how do you know? What did you say? But when Dustin asked you earlier, how do you know? You said, I just know.
Because I'm not a Christian, I do not involve myself in arguments over morality. I do not have a moral code. I have an ethical code. An ethical code is a system of beliefs, and I will use the word belief, about the nature of right and wrong action that is not based on religious belief or a deity.
Okay, but once again, if it's just an ethical code, it automatically
Why
reduces...
do you say just an ethical code?
Okay, because I'm using...
Because you're a Christian.
Okay, if it's an ethical code, I didn't use it. Yeah. I didn't need to use the word just, but
yes,
if
but we're calling
it
a sort of Freudian slip, Pastor.
It doesn't make any difference. Here's my point. If it's an ethical code...
I'm claiming it does make a difference.
Well, now you're not letting me finish my statement. If it's an ethical code that's not rooted in an objective standard such as God's Word, the Bible.
I didn't say that.
Then
it is rooted in an objective standard, not God's Word.
What's the objective standard then?
Human culture and history.
Well, human culture varies from culture to culture.
Yes, it does, and thank goodness it does.
So then, culturally, ethics are subjective.
You see, but you're thinking I'm talking about morality. I'm not. I'm talking about ethics. Ethics varies from culture to culture. Precise or particular ethical practices vary from culture to culture, from time period to time period. But what is distinctive about ethics is it is always a conception of right and wrong action. It's flexible. It changes. It's not deductive. It's inductive.
So how can you say that? How can you give a definition for evil if, according to your worldview, evil is always changing?
You see, again, I'm going to have to object. I don't accept the conceptualizations that you're forcing on me. You keep using the term worldview in a way that I feel uncomfortable.
Are you denying that there's a certain way in which Professor Ray Waller views the world?
Now, why is that an important question to even ask?
Why is it important Why is it an important issue to say that it doesn't exist? I mean, every time you use the word...
Why is that an important question to ask? I think it's important to be very precise about language.
It's an important question because I'm trying to demonstrate that you do have a worldview. And
yes, indeed. In other words, you have an assumption that you've already made that you're seeking to prove, and it's keeping you from being able to hear what I'm saying. That was the problem with the previous caller. In fact, unlike you, he was being very aggressively dominating. He was domineering. He was trying to impose his conceptions onto me. You're not doing that, but you are a person of faith, and you're a Christian.
But I'm not a fideist. I think that you're confusing faith with fideism.
Well,
I'm not a fideist. My faith is also built on evidences, and I would argue rational evidences.
And I would argue on your behalf. As I said earlier, I have nothing against belief in the Great Pumpkin. The only thing you require for your belief to be legitimate, and I allow you this, is that it be consistent. You appeal to the Bible for ultimate justification for your system of beliefs.
I do.
That does not give you the right to impose on me.
No, you're absolutely right.
Not just your system of belief, but the concept of belief as you understand it.
I'm not trying to impose anything. I'm trying to understand how, in your world, how you account for things like logic and ethics and things like common sense. I don't know how you could account for these things.
I don't know how you failed to see them.
No, I see them. I just don't know how you can account for them.
Then if you see them, why are you being so questioning?
Because I don't think that you can account for them.
But you see them.
Well, yeah, they're there because you're living in
Then
God's
why
world.
do you need to account for what you can see?
Well, I need to account for what I can see. I'm saying I'm viewing things from my worldview. I can see them from my worldview.
Thank you, Pastor.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering how, when you say I look at my hand and I see 5 fingers.
Yeah.
I'm wondering in Ray Waller's world, where do those 5 fingers come
Pastor,
from?
look at your hand right now.
I'm wondering where they come from.
Pastor,
I see 5.
Look at your hand right now.
I'm looking at it.
Do you see 5 fingers?
I see 5 fingers.
Do you see a thumb?
I do.
It's not Ray Waller's world, then, is it?
No, we live in the same world.
Yes.
But the difference is, in your world, you can't account for where this hand came from.
I don't need to, Pastor.
Well,
That was the problem that Justin had.
Okay.
It was the problem of infinite regress.
Okay. Well, that helps me now, because
Okay.
you're basically saying it doesn't matter where it comes from.
No, unless I happen to be curious about it. It's possible to carry out investigations about the source of forms. It's called the problem of forms in philosophy. Where did the original thing come from? Now, I'll ask you, Pastor, where did God come from?
God has always existed.
So he had no origin.
That's right.
Or she had no origin.
He
Or
had
it
no
had
origin.
no origin.
He's infinite and he's eternal.
Okay?
And the
How do
scriptures
you
declare that.
justify the belief in something that had no beginning, has no end, was just always there?
How do I justify the belief?
Yes.
Because the one that possesses those attributes has spoken. And
There
not
you
only
go.
that, and not only that, but he's a precondition for morality and logic.
There you go. That's your belief.
And he's a
I don't
precondition.
share that belief.
And he's a precondition for my hand. But see, there's a difference between saying I have a consistent worldview, and I don't bother me with the details. When I ask you where the hand comes from, essentially what you're saying is those are details that I'm not concerned with.
Yes, nor do I need to be.
So when you say that a worldview only makes sense if it's internally consistent, and then
No,
I
didn't
ask
say
you,
that. I didn't say that.
or a belief
worldview
system.
Only.
You
I
said
don't
a
use the
belief
term
system.
worldview.
Okay, a belief system.
You're using that term.
Okay, well,
What I said, again, was that all you need in order to have a religious belief is consistency, internal consistency.
okay. Do you have internal? You're talking only about religious beliefs.
Yes.
Okay, so internal consistency is not something that is necessary.
Now, you see, you know what you're doing, Pastor, is you're yearning towards induction, but you're trapped in a deductive worldview, to use your term.
I'm simply trying to understand where you're coming from.
You're asking questions that can only be answered inductively, but you bar yourself from induction.
Well, we all have our
You're inside
presuppositions.
a system of beliefs that is deductive.
We're both inside of a system of beliefs, and so
well,
just as
but mine's not deductive.
well, nevertheless you bar yourselves from the possibility of God by your presupposition that God can't be proven.
No, I'm not an atheist. I'm an agnostic.
No,
I'm not barring myself from anything.
I didn't say you were an atheist. I said you said that God is unprovable.
You said that I bar myself.
Yeah, that's because you said I'm barring myself. I'm saying
you're barring yourself because you're a believer. I'm not.
No.
A Christian is a believer. An atheist is a believer. I'm not a believer.
Well, you're believing in something. Just when we're starting to, I think, understand where one another's coming from, the time has run out. I do have another program that's scheduled to begin in just a few moments, so I need to let you go. But I appreciate you coming on the show, and I would like to have you on sometime in the future if we can continue this conversation.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to.
Okay.
I think that you're basically a good and just man, Pastor. I can tell.
Well, I appreciate that, and I have no reason to think otherwise of you, even though we don't share the same worldview.
And that's rational of you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming on.